Everything has to do with economics. Nothing moves on this planet without economic pushing. Nothing. Slavery was an economic concept. African blacks are a product of our environment.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast. Just telling Tony, who is our guest today, that I had started this podcast about a year ago. A little over a year ago, and my goal in 2024 was to do 100 Black men who were doing something in our society. I went to it's called the Trusted Edge. I went to the seminar in Minnesota. A guy named David Horsager, who does this amazing information on trust and how we start with trust, and how we approach our conversations with trust, and why trust is so important. And then I looked around the room as we do many times, and saw there's about 30 people of color in the room, and said, I'm going to really, I would love to come back home and do some stuff. And I started praying about it, and I was saying, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And he says, I want you to work with Black men. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I just want to work with Black men. And he said, I didn't ask you. He said, this is what I think you should be doing. And so that started what is now the Journey to Freedom podcast. And so last year we were able to interview over 105 Black men who are doing some things in the world, who are making a difference. When we think about where we've come from and the opportunities that were given to our ancestors that maybe not they'd be given, that we get to take advantage of, I guess is what I need to say, because it wasn't given to them. And so, Tony, this week on Thursday, I'm taking 15 of the folks that we've been interviewing and talking to. We're going to go to a civil rights victory tour in Alabama. So we're going to start out in Birmingham. We're going to spend some time learning about Birmingham. I have a friend there named Janice Kelsey. She's going to talk to us. She was around at the church bombing. One of her cousins was actually killed in the church bombing, and she was arrested from doing the protest. So she's going to talk to us. We're going to do a tour that talks about Shuttleworth and MLK and walk through the theater and that kind of stuff. And then we're going to talk about story. We're going to spend some time just kind of going through our story and where we showed up and where we move forward. And then we're going to move on. We're going to go to Selma. We're going to go to the Pettus Bridge, and we're going to the 16th Street Church, and we're going to spend some time and doing some stuff there. And then we're going to end the tour the next day after that at the Equal Justice Museum, the Bryan Stevenson Museum. And so where he talks about the world, the African-American slave trade. It talks about lynching and segregation and mass incarceration. And if you haven't been to that museum, you're going to want to, you're in Georgia, so you can just zoom down there pretty easy in a couple of hours and get there. We have to fly from across country. So so we got 15 people that are going, and we're going to experience this. But today, we were talking to Tony today. And so, Tony, I've asked you to tell your story. You can start it anywhere in that story, from your mama's womb to where you're at now. And then we'll chop it up after that. So thank you for being on today. Thank you for taking your time and being willing to spend it with us today. And so the floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me, Doctor. It's not too often that I have opportunity to chop it up with my brothers on a high intellectual level. So I'm definitely blessed that I have this opportunity to speak to you and all your folks. So basically, my story in this form basically started my father's in the military. My family comes from the Deep South. I'm here in Georgia. My parents are down by Jimmy Carter. Actually, my folks knew the Carters. There's not much you could tell me about that man. His outer persona and his internal persona is two different things. Let's just say, him and his folks. So I'm definitely from the South. I love the South. When I got out of college, I was in Augusta, and then I moved up here to Atlanta, and it's just a lot of things came to my awareness in regards to Black people, and our our path, our journey, by being an Army brat. I've always had exposure that a lot of people don't have, particularly here in the South. A lot of people don't get out and get to experience different cultures, different people, as I did as I was growing up. So I've always had this view of things that always had me to question. So I always question things. I question our relationships to other people. As Black people, I question the relations, how this country was formed, where's it going, how did it get here, kind of things. I always kept to be inquisitive. So in that, I've just always looked to find out the questions, answer the question why. Like, why are we as a people where we are? How did we get here from Mansa Musa, the richest man ever to live, to Hannibal and his elephants conquering Italy, to here? How did we get here? I mean, to me, that seems like a huge slide down. So I'm like, what happened? So something happened. I mean, so I always had that question. And then when I look at our history here in this country, it's a lot of misnomers I found, and a lot of untruths, and a lot of outright lies. And then that led me to another question: why? Why is there so much energy? As Public Enemy had this song called "Take a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back." That had a lot of truth in it. It wasn't just something that he just thought about. So why? What's the purpose? And then when you look at what we call ourselves, African American, let's think of that. Think of that. We got Africa and we got America. What other people are identified after two continents? This real interesting. So just questions after questions after questions, and this kind of led me to where I'm now. I'm doing a podcast. I'm interviewing very interesting people I try to do both sides, but a lot of people on the other side don't want to talk to me for whatever reason. So I'm having to create content, people who have different colors of the same rainbow on my side, and Caucasian, and try to get some of my own folks just to have a conversation. I might be wrong. They may be wrong, but the whole point is just have a conversation and leave our feelings at the door, because at the end of the day, we were all born in darkness, and a lot of things that we are taught are not necessarily truth.
That's good. Thank you for sharing, and just saying, hey, we're trying to have conversations, and there's people who are not wanting to have conversations, and so that makes it harder to do. But then there are people who will, and then those who will be able to maybe get a better understanding. But there's no way we're all going to come together and be able to live with each other and do things if we can't have those difficult conversations, those conversations that we don't always want to have. One of the things that, as I'm journeying and I'm doing coaching, and I'm telling people I want to help you become the person that you need to be in order to do what God put you on this planet to do. And, so many people are missing that, or some people don't understand, okay, these are the shoulders of the giants that we have come on, that sacrifice so much for us to be able to be in this position that we are at right now. And then sometimes we don't take advantage of it. When we think about the word identity, and who we are, and how we became, how you became the man that you are today, what are some of those factors that you think shaped your identity?
My father, my cousins, my grandparents on both sides. My father was a farmer. He had hundreds of land in South Georgia. For a Black man, that's very unique. Unfortunately, his kids didn't really appreciate it. So as soon as he got this opportunity, they sold it. Much to my chagrin, even at my young, tender age, I knew that What? Why y'all do that? And my father didn't like that neither, so he kept his half. So at least we got that still in the family. But that definitely shaped me. Just having that old Southern heritage, work ethic, stubbornness. I guess more of people could say that I definitely have that character trait. But as far as identity, it's just again, so much has been told to us that just isn't true as far as our people, and I've been having to deal with that and muddle through that because before we get a true idea of where we're going, we gotta know where we've been to figure out how we got here, and if our past, if our story is their story, not our story, we got a problem, and I think that's where we have fell into a trap. We don't know who we are. We're the only people who do not know who we are. We call ourselves something that was not given to us by the Creator. I mean, Africa was not Africa. Africa has had many names before it became Africa. So then, where did that come from? You know, if we were African when we first got here, the census report would show Africans. It don't show Africans. They show blacks or Negroes. So who were we? Were we already here? That could be a whole nother story. But as far as identity, we had to first find out who we were before we got here to get a better idea of to rightfully know where we're going and do it correctly. Because we can always end in a destination that we set out to be, but do we need to be there? And when we get there, are we what we're supposed to be?
Have you always lived in a deep south? Have you always lived in Georgia, or you?
No, like I said, my father was in the military, so I did travel some. Growing up, I love traveling. I love experiencing new people, new cultures, new areas. But for the better part since 1996, I've been here in Georgia, and it was somewhat of an awakening because, like I said, I spent most of my earlier time outside of coming to the country, as I say, my grandparents' home during the summers. Pretty much, I spent most of my time in Kansas, primarily in Kansas, and a little bit in Texas. But until I moved down here in the South, seeing the culture, seeing the strife between blacks and whites, I done had that growing up. You know, until I came to the South, I'm like, what? What is the problem? So it's different down here. But I mean, since I've been down here and since I got more educated about the culture, about myself, I love the South. I love it completely.
Gotcha. When we think about, I think about the word trust and, being able to trust others. I told you I went to that seminar and it was some amazing information that our culture wasn't receiving it, or at least in that little amount. And just kind of wondering why. When you think about the word trust and who you have to trust, what comes to your mind?
Faith.
Okay.
Faith. Trust has to be earned. A lot of people, they want platitudes and ribbons for this showing up. They want to be designated as queen or king, or they want to come into a relationship, have already somehow established trust with you. But I just met you, so that cannot be the case. You have to earn that, and that goes both ways. We as a people, when you look at the days back, say with Black Wall Street and that area, there's a lot of trust amongst our culture, just for common cause, common enemy. So now we don't have that trust so much, and a lot of it you can see in the media, you can see it in entertainment, you can see it in our children. Don't trust each other, and so that permeates into an adulthood. So now we're looking at each other with a side eye. So when you talk about trust, do I trust you based on common looks, common value, common perception. Are we on the same team? Are we not on the same team? Are we perpetrating? So a lot of trust now has to go through a lot more ringers than maybe back in the day, where we accepted people, trust people just based on, I believe you're on my side because you look like me. That's not so much the case now, and that goes both ways because I could feel at home in a room full of white people, and maybe not so much in a room full of my people, because it's the faith issue and it's a trust issue. A lot of that had to do with our perception, both what we perceive to be real and what we perceive that may not be so true.
When I think of Southern hospitality, right? When somebody tells me the Deep South, I think of what I've been told or read, because I haven't spent a lot of time in the Deep South. There's this Southern hospitality where everybody loves everybody trusts everybody. But then I hear the other side of it where, no, as long as you trust in the people who look like you and the people who are around you. What have you found in your dealings? Do you show up trusting somebody in the beginning until they prove you wrong? Or you kind of stay an arm length away until you learn who that person is? How does that work?
Generally speaking, I trust people until they give me a reason not to trust them. But then you have to use your spidey senses sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You have this lot of things we learn by touch, smell, taste, and sound. So in many cases, if I don't know you and I've seen depictions of you and it's not too favorable, then I may hold my walls up a little bit longer with you. I can still talk to you, but I'm still looking at you side eyes. Southern hospitality compared to Northerners, like we will work with you. We will tell you if we don't like you to your face.
Wow. Okay.
First, so then you know where I stand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. So now the trust comes now that we are of the same understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So then I ain't gotta guess what your intentions are. You already told me, in most cases. And Southern hospitality is like, just speaking from my age, from being 1960s, the young kids are on a whole different another album. But you know what your folks taught you, and your folks might taught you the wrong thing, but more things your folks taught you to treat people respectfully. Say yes, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Again, that's my generation older. The young kids, that kind of has fallen away from them. But for the old school South, yes, sir, no, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. That kind of open respect going in. And if I don't like it, I'll tell you.
Gotcha. So when I think of Georgia, right, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong in the realities of Georgia, I think of, Atlanta, which is, a very kind of like the Black Wall Street of the United States right now is Atlanta, the ATL. But then I think about rural Georgia, and my viewpoint is like Dukes of Hazzard and pickups with Confederate flags and that kind of stuff. And I don't know what the reality is, because then when I think about trust, I can go to Atlanta and trust all day, and that might not be right, because there's folks that you shouldn't trust anyways, not because of the color of skin, because they're not trustworthy people.
Right.
But then I think, like, what would my mom and dad have to teach me in rural Georgia to make sure not only that I stay alive, but that I can thrive within that community? Is there any reality to that, or there's things that you had to be taught growing up that most of us? I'm not even a Northerner, right? I'm from the West, so
Right.
what that's like, or Help me understand a little bit.
Well, I think there's two realities, right? There's one reality of what you've been taught the South is, and then there's reality that what the South is.
Mm-hmm.
Just like people had this perception of what Midwesterners are, their depiction of what West Coast are. I mean, Valley Girl. I mean, all this other stuff. But the South, first you got to understand a lot of what people have been taught. The relationship between blacks and whites here in the South are lies, untruths. To say that all whites were slave owners is to say that everybody is a business owner.
Okay.
You know, not everybody owned a business.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody was slave.
Yeah, most people don't own businesses. So
There you go. There you go. And to say that all whites were slaves is a lie, because there were some black slaves. You know, there were some white slaves. There were some black slave owners. There were some white slave owners. And of course, there were black slaves. So people got first to understand that. A lot of what they have learned about the South is not true. You have to understand the relationship between blacks and whites here in the South. You have to know the difference between post-Reconstruction and pre-Reconstruction. Also, what happened during Reconstruction. The first 7 blacks elected to Congress were Republican, and they came from the South. So there were blacks voting here in the South. So to say put everybody all in one lump, to say all whites are against blacks, all blacks are Toby, Kuta Kinte, all that nonsense. Once you break through that and see people just being people, and so long as your values jive with my values, we good. When you don't go with my values, now we got a problem. But that's the case anywhere, right? But here in the South, it's the same. We will open our doors for anybody. But when you cross me, we done. You know, and I'm okay with that. But when you look at the free spiritedness of the Southern people, and don't tread on me, the Southern people, I like that. Particularly when you look at what happened during COVID. Yeah, most of the harshest crackdowns during COVID happened in the North. It didn't happen down here in the South. People got to look at that. While people were shuttered in forcibly in New York and California and Illinois, we were down here in Florida and Georgia chilling in most cases outside of Atlanta. You know, I mean, outside of the more quote unquote Democrat enclaves. Everybody else up in the mountains, more further in the mountains, no mask. Everybody tend to own business. That's the free spiritedness of the Southern people, and that's what I like about them.
That's really good. When we think about, as I'm hearing you talk, do you think the divide is more social economic than it is race? When I mean like the difference in the split between people who don't have and people who have, and then I guess the expectation from the people who have is that there's not enough to go around, and then for the folks that are don't have are saying, well, maybe there's an entitlement or somebody owes me something. Do you think that's more of a divide, or
everything has to do with economics?
Okay.
Everything has to do with economics. Nothing moves on this planet without economics pushing it. Nothing. Slavery was an economic concept. There were white slaves before there were black slaves. Some records show that there were more white slaves when the ink was dry on the Constitution than black slaves in this country. It was economics. Just that whites couldn't handle it as well as we could. That's a testament to our strength, but at the same time, you got to understand it was an economic vehicle, particularly down here in the South where it was rural and it was urban up there in the North. That's why most of the slaves were down here in the South. But it was the economics. It's economics then, it's economics now. So when you look at the haves and have-nots, first you got to look at this is the greatest country on the planet. Period. Has its problems? Is it perfect? No. Anything that man touches, we have imperfections. Because men are imperfect. We are fallen people, fallen creatures. So understanding that, you stop looking for perfection. But hands down, you go anywhere else. The reason why there are more blacks here in this country than anywhere, more black millionaires in this country than anywhere else. There's more black millionaires in this country than anywhere else. There's more freedom for us to do what we want to do, to achieve what we want to do. All we got to do is get our mind right. That's where the problem comes in. Because when we are told that we can only be slaves, when we are told we are product of slavery, that kind of dims our light. But if we let people know that we come from Mansa Musa, that we come from Hannibal, now, okay, all right. Now I got a little bit more, pep in my step, because I got an image that's more positive than Kuta Kinte. So once you start with the mind, then everything is open. Once you understand that we do have the possibility of reaching our goals, unlike anywhere else on the planet. We have more blacks and millionaires more than Africa, more than Europe, more than Canada, more than South America. Why? Because of our Constitution, that our country was founded upon, codified, that I am a product of God, not a product of man. So therefore, my aspirations and what I could achieve is endless. Once we get that in our mind, there's nothing that we cannot do.
So if that's the case, and we need to get it in our minds that we can achieve, we can move forward, we can have anything anybody else has, what's stopping us? Why are we not achieving those?
Mentality. Now, have you traveled outside this country? This is a question.
I've traveled.
Have you lived outside the country?
I've not lived outside the country. I've traveled outside the country.
That's a difference. And it's no knock. But I've lived in Canada because I just wanted the experience. I lived after visiting a couple of summers. I lived there consistently for almost 2 years. Blacks are different in Canada. I was in Sweden for about a month. Blacks are different in Sweden. American blacks are a product of our environment. When we're constantly taught, we come from slaves. When we are constantly taught what we can't do. When we are constantly taught that our history starts in the 1960s. When we are constantly taught and programmed and conditioned that we've been under the finger of white man. Never hearing the other story about Mansa Musa and all of our great inventors, Charles Drew, all those people. We don't hear the positive side. Madam C.J. Walker, we don't hear that story. We hear of the time when we were down. So when you constantly have that conditioning in your head, as Carter Woodson said, one of my favorite quotes, if you can control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. That's more true than anything else. And once you tell that mind it can't do, it's like that bull that you tied to that fence. He, with all that muscle he has, he would not tear that fence down. The same thing with the elephant. When you tie that elephant down, as strong as that elephant is, in his mind will tell him that he cannot move. And he doesn't. The mentality aspect, and when I visited Canada and saw blacks there, they didn't have no preconditioned inhibitions. They didn't have the thought that they couldn't do. They didn't have the thought that because they were black, they couldn't do this, they couldn't say this, or whatever. Because that's not how they are, what they are taught there. They're not taught that in England, other European countries, because their achievement rate academically is higher in the UK than here. It's higher in Canada than it's here. So it's not a black thing. It's an intellectual thing. We are conditioned to act the way we act. We're conditioned to believe that government that based on a history of slavery, that's our ceiling. That's our heritage. So once you have that mentality, you're gonna act a certain way.
Can we change that, or what are are we hurting ourselves by not by perpetuating these stereotypes and
Yeah.
perpetuating? And what do we do to? I
When
mean, stuff like this. But what?
when when you look at, and I speak on this many times in my podcast, and actually I just did one entitled "Black Lives Matter, but to blacks." Um, when you look at our picture as it was in the 40s, our pictures in the time of the 50s and 60s, look at our pictures back then. We had family, mother, father, child. We had community, strongest community in the United States. We had wealth. We had, due to that bedrock, family, finance, health, we went out killing each other. The picture of the black male was suited, sharp, was not with the pants down below your waist. The women were dressed dignified, wasn't showing everything that God gave you. You know, our state of mind was more refined. It wasn't so like beastly as it is today, primal. You know, our actions, our perception, our depiction right now is more primal. That's not our history. This has been created. Even in the 90s, look at the shows that depicted us. Even in the 90s, we had the Cosby shows. We had Living Signal. We had very refined depictions of ourselves. Look at our depictions now. You know, gangsters. You know, even back in the so-called black exploitation films, we didn't have where the gangster was put on a pedestal. We had Foxy Brown. We had Cleopatra Jones. You know, we had all those so-called black exploitation films that really did exploitate us in how we were viewed. We wasn't the bad guys all the time. We weren't the drug dealers. In many cases, we were fighting the drug dealers. You know, I mean, I watched Foxy Brown, and she was a fed. A black female was a fed going against the drug dealers. Cleopatra Jones the same way. You don't see those characters anymore. So then you have all of our kids growing up with what they believe is them in a very negative fashion. So that's what is going around in their head, that this is what they could be. This and a basketball player or a sports athlete. They don't see anything outside of that. So it is self-perpetuating self-destruction of our own culture, because when you have 80% illegitimate childbirth, when you had more single men and single black women than you do married, more than any other group, that's a recipe for a culture that is in decline.
Yeah, because when I think of it, and I go back in history, when we think when segregation was happening from between like deep segregation from like the 20s to the 50s, after we had more wealth, we had families, the dads were in the home, we started acquiring homes, and the amount of home ownership amongst blacks was higher percentage than it is today. And then you think the dismantling in the 70s of the family, 60s, well, into the 60s, 70s, Civil Rights Act, and when they really started bringing people out, you go, okay, so that was a major turn. But how do we come back from that? How do we, we think of the mass incarceration of the 90s and the war on drugs that Reagan decided that he needed this war and take all these people out. If we're going backwards, what are some of the things we can do to start moving back forth. And it was encouraging to hear, hey, yeah, we have more millionaires than any other place in the world.
That's
But
real.
at the same time, we're so divided by, this economic divide.
That's excuse my language. That's a mental fuck, right? That was going on.
Mhm.
We have almost $4.7 trillion that goes to our community after taxes. We're only second by the Hispanics or the Mexicans who have over 5 trillion. That's a lot of money. But yet, in our mind, we're poor.
Mhm.
So what we perceive is what we're going to believe.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't want to agree with me, but our trouble started with the Democrat Party. Our trouble started in the 1960s. Our trouble actually started with Woodrow Wilson.
Mhm.
Then came FDR, then of course LBJ. I cannot see the demise of the family in the black community without seeing LBJ.
No, yeah.
Because LBJ changed the requirements for social welfare, social security benefits. He changed that to say a black woman cannot get economic federal assistance so long as there is a man in the house. He started that. And if you look at the graphs, the black family started to go down in the 60s. Why? Ask that question, LBJ. Because once you destroy the family, everything else goes south.
Mhm.
So that's what happened. That's what's happened. And when you look at the product of that is the 80% illegitimate childbirth. You don't see that in any other culture. What are they reading? What are they eating? What are they being told that we're not getting? Or flip that around. What are we being told that they're not being told? We're having two different conversations. Whether it be the Caucasian community, the Asian community ain't having none of this because the Asian community, they got a solid family. They got the priorities in order, family, education, wealth amongst themselves. We used to be that way. What happened? What happened? And I say you want to start with detach ourselves from the Democrat Party. You cannot have a situation where we're voting 90% to one party. What's the incentive for them to come and do right by us? There isn't none. If they already got us sent there on the edge of the corner pocket. We're sitting there on the edge of the corner pocket. They ain't got to worry about us. They're going to the Hispanics, they're going to the Asians, they're going to the Indians, they're going to the Jews, bargaining. Now, Booker T understood that. Get your money right. Be self-sufficient. But W.E. Du Bois, he wanted a small group of elites to control the masses. That was the fight that they came to the table with under the Woodrow Wilson administration. Booker T lost. Ever since then, we've been going the way of the smart elites, where you talking about the Jesse Jacksons, the Al Sharptons, all of these small group of elites telling the black people what to do. And it had nothing to do with being self-sufficient, getting your money right, and then go to the bargaining table. We go to the bargaining table as beggars. We will never get what we need out of any political party if that's our situation. And we get what we get. When we're going to change that, decouple ourselves from the Democrat Party, get the churches involved properly, telling the word of God, saying you got to have a man in the home. You gotta understand the quality of a woman and a man union, a qualified man woman union. We got to get back to a man cannot be a girl and a girl cannot be a man. We need to knock that out and settle that noise. We need to get the church back into our lives properly, and then also get the home right. Then everything else will fall in place.
Gotcha. Well, we have, social media's out. We can't stop it. It's there. It's here for the rest of our lives.
The home takes care of that. You have communities that the parent rules the house, not the child. So you got families forbidding that child to have any social media account. Why is that so far-fetched? When my mama told me I couldn't do something, she didn't care what everybody else did in the neighborhood. Did yours? What my mom said, went. Why is that not the case now? Because parents want to be the child's friend. When I was growing up, my parent was my parent. We had a line. Yes, sir, no, sir. No back talking, nothing. Didn't matter what everybody else was doing around me. I don't know why that's so far-fetched. You ain't got to have your child hooked on TikTok. You choose to have your child hooked on TikTok.
Well, we have this educational system that, for lack of words, is babysitting our kids and then telling them they have all these rights against their parents. In this quest for the best education out there, but is it really teaching our kids how to be self-sufficient?
That's government education. That's public schools. That's not private schools. No. And if so, why is that the case? Parents pay the taxes for the schools. Parents are the parents of that child. Why do we not see parents protesting when they hear that their child's being taught how to put a condom on a cucumber? Why are we not protesting that? And if we don't protest that, whose fault is that afterwards? We can't blame the school system. If the parents are not protesting, say, I'm going to take my child out of this school and do it in mass, the power is with the people. Always have been, always will be. That's how this country started. It wasn't from the top down, it's from the bottom up. But we have allowed government to get off its leash. To now we believe that it's from the top down. So we had the school system, public school system, telling us what we're going to do with your child. Hell no. My parents, that we know. We have lost that in us. We're too busy attending to stuff that really doesn't matter. If you have a child, you got a responsibility. Your sole responsibility, particularly as a father, that's why the man was removed from the home, and that's why it's so detrimental to our community in particular. When you don't have someone who's defending the home, defending the woman, defending the child, you're going to have problems. That's why you see all the minorities moving their children out of public schools into private schools. We're the only ones stuck. We're the only ones fighting for public schools. But in actuality, Black women particularly want pay vouchers, even though the Democrat Party is staunchly against it because they are beholden to the teachers union. If they really have proper respect for our beliefs and our will and what we want as a Black community, it'd be different. But that tells you the value of our vote in reality. There's no value except in numbers.
Yeah. I have a podcast that I do on Sunday nights. It's called Why Love Waits. And the reason we started it, I have panels of Black women and Black men. And the reason that we started it is because when you think of 50%, it's like 49.89% of Black women that are 40 and over have never been married. And of that 50% of those women over 40 that haven't been married, 75% of them have a child.
Yeah.
And so, the conversation is that we don't need men. We don't need, and then we have our men saying, well, they're not, whatever, back and forth. And if we don't solve that, because back in the 60s, that percentage was less than 18. Now we're over 50% that are saying the family unit isn't important. If we're going the wrong direction, and we need to stop it as fast as we possibly can. But I'm not sure the solution. I mean, we can talk about it all the time, but until we, like you said, get into, office or get into, the people who are saying, no, I'm not going to settle for this. And then we have our social media that jumps in and, tries to raise our kids because it's easier, right? It's easier to stick your child, well, especially if you're single, right? If you're a single mom or a single dad and you're trying to raise a child, well, you don't have a lot of time other than to stick them in front of a screen because you got to work and you got to feed and all that kind of stuff. So, there's got to be some massive changes. And I'm glad I think having this conversation is a great way to begin and to start doing it. But where are we at with not going backwards anymore? How do we help our youth and our young parents and our, folks like my mom, same thing. I mean,
there's a small change, but as my grandfather used to say, we ain't all gonna make it.
Okay.
We're not gonna make it. Because there's so much money in our condition. When you look at the TV shows, they're all gangstified. When you look at and see where the eyeballs of the young blacks are pointed to is deviancy. When you hear baby mama, name out there, it's popularized. When you hear a woman having 10 plus kids from 10 different daddies, and she's still going because she's collecting $3,000 from government a week. And New York City is giving them free room and board. Hey, it's economics. It's economics. When you got the money going the wrong way, and when you see that statistics show that people value money more than they do faith, child, family, you got a problem. It's upside down. Because like I said, it didn't used to be that way. We used to say family, God, country. That's my order anyway. People put country first, but I put family first. So when those three are not even in the picture and money is ruling everything, that's where we are. And when you look at, again, we're being dealt a meal that no other culture is involved in. So you got to first look at the reason why that is happening and do something about it. But when we have our pillars, a broken home, when we don't have our church involved, black church is on the decline. Why? Because they're not giving any food and nourishment to its sheep. Because Christianity is a very strong religion. It's very hard religion. It has absolutes. But when you compare a child that comes from a home that has no discipline, or very little, and compare that to a family that had discipline, like my home, you can see the difference. You can see that child who didn't have no home discipline growing up, they more than likely be out on the streets or in jail or dead, compared to the one who had discipline, had boundaries. You can't do. That's a person who, like you, like myself, like, Obama, people who achieve stuff because they knew right from wrong. They knew they had a healthy appreciation for authority because they had that. you can't do, you won't do. Don't care how much you scream. So we got to look at that, and that has to be involved in any kind of turnaround or resurrection, because that's the only way it's going to come about. No other way, and a lot of us are too far gone.
Well, one of the things that, when I think about you saying the demise of the church and folks not going there, but you said something that hit me, which was economics and the power of economics. Excuse me. One of the things that I think that we have to start teaching is our capitalistic society, and the way that it's structured right now is never going to be trickled down. It's trickled up. And we keep throwing money into economy, but we have a culture that spends.
That's a negative viewpoint.
You think so? Because let me say this first, and then you can answer to it. And when I say trickle up effect, is what the reason I say that is because when you think of the pandemic and you think of the stimulus checks, and the 1%, the top 1% of our country said, "Give me 5 years, and 100% of that stimulus will be back in our hands." And so the money flows back uphill because we're such consumers, and we're not investors, and we're not savers, and we're not doing the things that keep the money circling in the community. We're doing the things that take the money and give it right back to the people that are the wealthiest people in our country, because we spend, and we can't stop ourselves for whatever reason. Is we get $1 and we go spend $2. They know if we spend $4, right? If we get a stimulus check, that we're not, it was so funny. You'd watch folks that don't have hardly any money get $1,500 check and then go buy a Gucci purse at $1,400. Was like, well, I wasn't going to pay, and you think of our spending habits and what we do, and it just seems like it keeps circling back to the people who hold all the cards anyways, instead of keeping it in our communities. How do we start circling back to like a Black Wall Street, or where the money that is being spent and used stays in our communities and isn't given to the wealthiest 1% billionaires that are in our world?
That's a very good question. And education. When you look at our grandparents and you look at those who so-called quote unquote were slaves, which I don't agree with, by the way, they had nothing, so to speak, but yet they knew how to run a farm. They knew how to grow vegetables. They knew how to make massa money with very little education. Where did that go? It's still in us. Education system changed after World War II for everybody. It wasn't just targeted to Black community. Black communities, when we had our own schools, were better than the whites. So if we know that, we know the answer is us, for better or for worse. When you say trickle down doesn't work, that's the only way it can work in a capitalist society, because poor people don't get nobody jobs. What you illustrated was the fact that we don't have any financial education. That's where it stops. When we knew what a buck was, and we knew if we went to the mill, how much went into a pound and how much we could get out of a liter, from my head, no calculator, no computer, from my head we could add that stuff up. So we knew because we had to. That's how we survived. So the answer is financial education, knowing what to do with that dollar when we get it. So when it comes to our home, we know what to do with it. Then it will stay longer. When the government can only survive through its people, but so it has to have commerce. They don't care if an Indian is opening a store. They don't care if a Jew is opening a store. They don't care if a Black person is opening a store. They want businesses to succeed. That's why income tax is made for businesses, not for individuals. Never was, never will be. Individuals will get hammered every time, every year due to income taxes, because it's not meant for individuals. Once you understand business is what America is, Then we would get into business, real business, our family's business, incorporating our family, incorporating whatever you do, make it a business. Then you keep money in your community, you keep money in your home, you keep money in your pocket. But until we understand what a dollar is and stop thinking that this is not our home, that is the white man's home, without any proof backing that up, just because someone told you that's your history. Once you learn what our own self is, we will know what to do with everything. Then this is the greatest country on the planet. I mean, it's not the story of the richest man in Babylon.
Yeah.
You have people walking around on gold. So how are you walking around on gold and you poor? What? That's the question that we need to be asking ourselves. And don't get mad at the so-called white man. Look in the mirror yourself. How is it that other blacks could succeed and you can't? If this is a racist society, how can Indians earn more money than whites, as they do? If it's a racist society, how is it that the Indians and Asians are building factories and stores in black communities? But we've been there for 5 generations. That's what we've been taught and conditioned. We're the only one eating that meal that we can't do. We got Africans coming in and seeing the promise of America and going at it, passing us by. We sit on the step. Man, they working hard out there. They're crazy. No. At the same time, after we see all of them succeed, we mad at them. If that's not psychosis, I don't know what is. So when you ask me what can we do, we need to change our mindset. Yeah. Maybe we are going back to learning from a class of Indians, so we get reconnected. The Indians from India, not Indians from here. The Indians from India, because they are where we were 4 generations ago. We need to sit in class and say, Mr. Ma'am, teach me about your culture, how you keep money in the home, how you go find a woman and stay with them forever, low divorce rate. How do you not worry about politics, not worry about who's getting elected? The Asians had the lowest voter participation rate than any other culture in America. We're the only people that put so much value into voting somebody is to save us, rather than look in the mirror and save ourselves.
Love it. Well, cool. What do we not talk about? Because this has been an amazing conversation because we get to talk about how to change. Well, because if we don't have these conversations, right, we can't change it. Because it's about education, just like you said. And people don't know what they don't know. And so hopefully they will listen and begin to seek out knowledge, right? Because if they're expecting everybody to force and spoon feed it, and you don't go out and look for yourself, then you can't be part of the solution. You're just part of the problem that continues to perpetuate itself. And so hopefully this is given enough roots or given enough thought process to go, wait a minute. These 2 gentlemen who are talking about our culture, talking about how we need to move forward, are giving us enough in there that we need to go research and find out this stuff for ourselves. That's why I'm taking 15 black men to Alabama at the end of this week, right? Because we got to know where we came from. We got to know what those guys worked so hard for us to have. And then to see, schools in the 1940s, these black schools had better test scores than all the white communities around, because they were working hard, and then all boom, it just goes away. So I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of talk about whatever you want that you want to, tell people about your podcast or whatever it is, so that we can continue this conversation, because it's been.
Well, of course, my podcast is Project Third Eye Open, and the question that I have is right above me: question with boldness, as Thomas Jefferson once said. We question the existence of God. And back then, that was a real question. And we got to understand how really a serious question that is, to question the existence of God. And when we look at it now, we got to question, what the hell are we doing? What's going on? Why is this happening to me? Yeah. Those questions, and listen to our third eye. Of course, we see things that then we let the crowd come in afterwards and tell us that's not what you saw. That's not what you saw. But you saw that. Stick with that because that is more likely going to be the truth. So definitely do check out my podcast, Project Third Eye Open. That's Project Third, spelled out, the letter I, opened.com. My podcast, my website's there. Check my podcast on all the social medias, Rumble video for sure, and then of course there's always the typical other social medias out there that you definitely follow me on, subscribe, like. But this having conversation, and I definitely enjoy the doctor reaching out to me because I don't get the opportunity to sit down with my folks and just chop it up like this seriously because a lot of them, they don't want to hear it. A lot of them, they don't believe it. They believe what they believe, and that's okay, but there's always consequences to everything. But we've been suffering under ignorance for a long time, and when you ask me what's going to change, we need to change that, the ignorance.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Before we go, I wanted to make sure you kind of explain third eye because I think people have different perceptions of what that means, and they think like the devil's trying to reach into your mind or something like that.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
That's not that. I don't want people leaving just going, oh, yeah, he's a cult, I don't want to watch his podcast. So, yeah, kind of explain that a little bit. Just
the third eye from the ancient Greeks, quote unquote. This area right here is supposed to be symbolic of your third eye, meaning that you're going to hear something, you're going to see something. Like this may start holding a conversation, but when I saw the World Trade Center come down, I saw that as demolition because I've seen demolition before. That's what I saw. And then everybody say, that's not what you saw. That's not what you saw. What you saw was a plane hitting the top and the oil from the gasoline coming down from the 150th floor to the bottom. And that caused not one building, but 5 buildings to go down. That's what you saw. And now you got the media. That's what you saw. You didn't see demolition. You saw the result of this aircraft going into this storm, hurricane-proof skyscraper going straight down. Within no other time does physics work that way. But hey, don't believe what you saw, believe what I tell you. So that's where that story comes from. You can believe me or your lying eye. That's where it came from. So when I say third eye, you know the truth. Because something's telling you, nah. That's the third eye. Because your third eye is telling you, consciousness, subconscious, is telling you the truth. But you have the subconscious, you got the conscious. The subconscious is going to tell you the truth. The world's going to feed into your conscious, and now that is going to be your truth. You got to decide which is which. That's my point of view with that.
Love it. Thank you for articulating that in a way that people can understand.
Did I do a good job?
You did a very good job. Absolutely. And so for those of you who are watching today, and this was an informative session, go ahead and hit subscribe the button, hit the notification button, share it with people. As we continue to try to move forward, when I think I'm living in purpose, right? My purpose is to help people become the person they need to be in order to do what God put them on this planet to do. And you can't do that unless you're educated. You can't do that unless you see other different perspectives of where people are at, and then be able to use that intuition, that discernment to be able to know exactly what is right. And just, especially with AI and everything else that's out there in social media, you have to research for yourself. You can't just take it for granted that the person that's talking to you across the street or whatever it is has your best interest at heart. And that, you know, because we are in a society that people will do whatever they possibly can to get ahead. Somehow they think that we live in a world that has limited resources, and if I let you, if he lets you have something, then he's going to take away from what he has. And we know that that's not true. We live with a guy, a creator that, and a God that is given us unlimited resources and has the way that we can go in there and we can make a difference in people's lives. So go ahead and make that difference. Hey, my friend, don't forget you are God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys on the next one. Thank you, Tony. This has been enlightening, fun, and of course you did a great job. So we'll talk to you soon. All right.